I just made the marks 1 and 2, put them on all sides of the boards. These ends of the boards go together.
Okay, okay, there. All right.
I'm just getting all my clamps set up to clamp these together. These are the cross pieces that will go across the long pieces that are laying down here at the ground. Okay, we've got to do the same thing here we did before. Get these all even, more or less, at the end. Here again, this isn't one of those things that needs to be perfect. I just like to have it close. Now, pull it together. It's close enough. There. Alright, from the end that I evened up here, I come down and make my first mark at 12 inches. Then I go down the 1 9/16 and make another mark. This will be my notch. Now I come down and make a mark at 36 inches. I come back towards the other marks to the 1 9/16 mark. There's my 2 notches. This edge to this edge will be 24 inches, which is just slightly narrower than my sawhorses will be. I come over here, make my mark, go to the 1 9/16, make my mark, make sure I have a good line that I can see. X, 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 X. Okay, I no longer have to set my square at the 1 9/16 because I do not need to make the marks here, as my saw blade is already set at 1 9/16 deep. So it'll automatically make this for me, and it isn't necessary for me to mark these. So the only marks I have to make are the ones across here for the outside edges of the notch. Now I'll do my other notch. There's one. There's 2. Okay, I'm ready to put my safety glasses on and go back to cutting. What I said about 2x4s 8 feet long, we're over 8 feet long. These 2 centerpieces, as you can see, were cut at the 48 inches. These are the long pieces, and it doesn't make any difference. But when I mark them, I'm going to mark one of these as 1, 2, 3, 4, so that I can know where to put them. Probably the long ones will go at the end, the shorter ones will go in the middle, which I'll explain to you when we put this all together. Now we're going to cut the notches. Here we go. That looks horrible. But since this is a sacrificial part, all I care about is that it fits and doesn't bind up when I put it together. It still looks horrible. I think I'll invest in a chisel. All you be cabinet makers out there, I hope by now you haven't fallen down drop dead laughing at the way I've been cutting these notches. I know when I get my shop set up and I have my table saw set up and I have a sled on it, these are ideal to cut with a sled and a dado blade, and then it'll look really professional. But remember, these are sacrificial. These are intended to be destroyed. It just happens that I started first at destroying them.
You ain't coming in the house until you get that cleaned off.
Somebody paint their toenails? I just paint my whole foot with sawdust. All right, I need to mark these. This is going to be marked 1-1. The first one signifies that it goes on the same side as the 1 on the long piece, and the 1 means it's the first one by that 1. The next one, I'm marking 1-2. It's the second one down. The next one will be 1-3. And the last one, of course, is 1-4. Now we're ready to put it together. There's my number 1, there's my number 2. Okay. Now we're going to see if it fits. Get 1 and 2. Second one. And so far I haven't matched any numbers and it's still working. Good for me. And here's the last one. There we go. The tops of these cross pieces is what I've called the sacrificial area. When we put the plywood up on here and we set the saw blade to just barely go through the plywood by about 1/16 of an inch, as we make cuts in this piece of plywood to get it down to a size that is manageable or to get it to my finished size, we'll actually cut a slice into these top pieces. It isn't going to hurt anything. When we get too many slices in them to where it's really uneven and I have to do something about it, now I can take these and run them through my table saw and take off 1/16 of an inch, and I have brand new pieces to cut up. That's what I mean by this being a sacrificial table for cutting my plywood on. When I go to make the cabinets, which is a project I have for my bride in our house, bookshelves to go down our hallway, we'll have to show you a picture of our hallway before and die laughing, and a picture afterwards. As wide as I am, I can make it down the hallway most of the way. There are a couple, whoa, there we go. There are a couple places that I have to kind of turn sideways to get down our hallway. So when I get the really good plywood that I want to be really careful on cutting, I set my saw blade just a 32nd of an inch to go through so I don't damage the veneer on the back side. What I'll actually do is cut through this, which isn't going to hurt anything. I can always dress it and keep on going. But this was built just for my bride, and of course me. Shall we put the plywood on it and show them how it works? The tools necessary to accomplish this job are the skill saw, the proper blade for the skill saw, measuring device, marking device, and to make a nice, easy, straight cut, you need something that allows you to move the saw in an even line. The first thing you should locate on your saw when you get ready to change the saw blade is the lock button, which allows you to lock the arbor for the saw so you can tighten or loosen the nut holding the saw blade on. The skill saw, it's this little button right here. This allows you access to the blade by moving that. So I push the button and I turn the saw blade until I get to the point where the blade is locked and I can no longer move it. The skill saw lets you contain the wrench necessary to do this, and you turn it counterclockwise to loosen the nut. By the way, make sure you unplug the saw before you do this. Take the nut out, take the washer off. At this point, you can release the button, pull the blade guard up, raise the blade up, and simply remove it from the saw. On these blades, this one says framing. Notice how far apart the teeth are. It's also the shape of the teeth that makes the difference. On this one, notice that there are a lot more teeth. They're a lot closer together. This one has 40 teeth. This one has 24 teeth. You want the 40 tooth for cutting panels. Makes a nice even cut. That's why I'm changing from the flaming blade to the panel cutter. Always look for this arrow of rotation. On every saw I've ever seen, skill saw like this, if you're looking at the blade the way you put it on the saw, the rotation is always counterclockwise. So if you've rubbed this arrow off, always remember that these blades, notice how the teeth kind of look like a little shovel scooping material in that direction. Now we're going to install the blade. Pull the blade guard forward, making sure that we have it in the proper orientation. Slide it in, drop it over, and make sure that it turns on the arbor. Now the bevel washer goes on, and it has flats on it. It only goes one way. Now you put the bolt in. Do not force it. It goes in with your fingers. You should be able to spin it freely. If you can't, it's damaged. You need to replace it. At this point, you let go of the blade guard. Push the little black button while you turn the nut, the bolt head, to lock, and you have to push that arbor button. It doesn't have to be really, you don't have to get on it really tight, but it needs to be fairly snug. Now you're ready to go to work. When you're using the straight edge to place the saw against, there's two dimensions you have to know. One of which is the one when you measure from the tooth, and some of the teeth point this way, some of the teeth point this way, and some of them point straight ahead. So I have to look, and that's one of them. So I make a measurement from that tooth over here is 1 1/2 inches. Now I'm going to locate the tooth that goes the other way, which is right there, and do not push against the blade because the blade will flex on you. Just touch the blade with your tape measure, and it reads 5 inches. Those are the two dimensions that you need to know for your saw. So this one I'm going to mark 1 1/2, and this one is 5 inches. That's the measurement from the blade to the edge of the saw base. I never do a project like this without prior planning. You know, that's the 6 P's. Prior planning prevents bleep, poor performance. This is a book that my lovely bride made for me, which is in 2 parts. You'll see a still picture of it a little later. showing a journal where I can write what I'm going to do, and then shows a graph area that shows how I drew out what I'm doing. I never do a project like this unless I've drawn it out so I know what I'm doing. At this point, I'm going to be measuring from that end of the plywood down 6 feet, 72 inches. And then earlier, I showed you how I measured the saw as to what kind of change that I had to accomplish so I can put my cross piece on and get it in the right place. So from the 6 foot mark, which is where I want the saw blade to go down, I need to come back this direction towards the far end. I need to come back from 6 foot, or 72 inches, 1.5 inches to 70 and 1/2 inches, and make a mark. Now that's the line that I'm actually going to put my guide on. Now I do it on this side. I'm going to move to the other side now. From the other side now, I'm going to do the same thing. Hook my tape, 72 inches. That's the line I'm going to cut down. Come back to 70 and 1/2 inch, and I'll make my mark. That's the line I'm going to put the straight edge on. This is my straight edge. You can see the name. Swanson. I have no idea where I bought it. I'm going to position it so that it's on the mark there, and on the mark over here. The unit comes with cute little clamps. When you put them on, snug them up, but don't put them on really hard, fast, tight, because you will be moving them. On this side, I have to watch and make sure that I'm right on the mark. Now I'll go back and check the other side. Make sure you have the clamp tight at this point. I'm right on the mark, and there, I've tightened it down. All right, we're ready to make the first cut. We have to set the saw blade depth properly. To do so, this lever releases the adjustment. Now we can take and move the base up and down, which you can see allows us to adjust the cutting depth of the saw. Now I need to set it. The plywood is 3/4 of an inch. I need to set this just a shade over 3/4 of an inch. And this is the really hard part. To do this, you really need 3 hands, and I don't have them, unfortunately. Okay. I set my tape measure, and I pick the tooth that's on the high side towards me. And I've set it about 1/16 of an inch over. After you tighten it, this is one of those things that you measure twice and cut it once. Make sure you didn't change anything. Okay, I'm about 1/16 of an inch over the 3/4 of an inch. Okay, just let go. I'm now ready to plug the saw back in. Put your safety glasses on. Align the saw and start. You ready? Why haven't I done this before? This is the bottom side of the cut using that panel blade, just barely coming through 1/16 of an inch. And this is the top cut. You can't hardly tell the difference. However, you should always make sure that your good side that you want to have perfect is on the downside when you're cutting with a skill saw. Because as the blade comes up, as the tooth comes up out of this wood, it has a tendency to tear this top surface. Whenever you're cutting a piece of plywood, always identify the two best edges, and there will be two best edges. In this case, I identified that edge and my far right edge, which would be left of the camera, as the two best edges. So those were my two reference lines that I'm working from. I'm measuring from there over 3 foot or 36 inches and making a mark, and then I'm going to come back that 1.5 inches and make my mark for positioning my guidelines here. Okay, the line I want to cut down is going to be marked at 36 inches. So I come over 1.5 inches to 34.5, and that's the mark where I'm going to set the edge of my guide. Now I've marked one end, now I'm going to the other end. At that end, if you remember, I had the end of my tape, and the tape is really close to the edge. As this edge may be rounded a little bit, I move in further to mark my tape to hook it. So I give myself a little bit of clearance here to make sure I'm on a straight edge. I come over 36 inches and 34.5. This is the line that I'm going to put my saw guide on. I made my two marks, and I put a little circle there and I put a little circle there, just a key in my mind to know this is the one I'm putting my gauge on. This is the piece that's used to put these two pieces together to make them one straight piece. You slide it right in the little tongue and groove area, approximately halfway down, and they don't have to be tight, just snug up the little thumb screws, stick it into the other end, until it's flush, and then snug the thumb screws up. We have a long piece for a long cut. Now, one thing I want to caution you, when the saw gets to the center of this, as you're running the saw down it, you will have a tendency to push hard against this. Don't do that, because you can flex this, and now you're going to have a bowed line instead of a nice straight one. Here we go. Oh, why didn't I build this thing before? Oh my gosh. That matrix has taken all of the hard work out of cutting this plywood.